Hey guys, it is Thursday, November the 3rd, 2022. And I want to come on and talk with you all about something that the Father has really been impressing very hard in my spirit for the last couple of days. And it is in reference to something our family has been referring to for many years. We call it the train. And I want to encourage you guys with this message. And so I'll just ask you to listen through to the end. And I thank you for your time. But first, I want to discuss these fall feasts. And I believe that they're not over. I really do. Mel and I have been discussing, this is Mel with the channel, Mel Loves Yeshua. She and I have been discussing these things, and it started on Halloween Day. There was just some different things, indicators, that Mel was being led by the Holy Spirit to kind of look into, and we were discussing this. And so she and I both kind of together went and looked at Stellarium. And we learned through just looking at that program that the sun isn't moving into the scales of Libra until November the 7th. And then, of course, very, very early in the morning on the November 8th, there's a blood moon, total lunar eclipse. And so, you know, I've never been one much to look at the constellations and to really understand the lining up of the months with these stars and the constellations and what all that means. Of course, you know, many of us are very new to this, trying to figure out just what the Father's calendar truly looks like. And so I never really looked into that possibility, but this is something that I find very significant, actually. And so if Libra is lining up with the 7th month, then the scales of Libra are not what the sun will be in until November the 7th. And so there's something that, you know, we need to be praying about and asking the Father, is this really over? Is this a sign that these fall feasts have yet to begin? And so I just would, Mel and I both probably, she'd agree with me on this. We just ask you guys to pray on this and ask the Father to lead you in this. One of the first things that came to my mind when I discovered that the constellation of Libra is actually scales, the first picture that came to mind was the scales that were given to the Black Horseman. I wonder if that's a clue about these the times that we're in and the breaking of these seals, possibly. You all pray about that. I had no idea Libra was even a set of scales. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so this is all kind of some new understanding that we're given. But of course, you know, you all pray and ask the Father for your own confirmation of this. I believe also that it's very possible that this could be the delay that's discussed in the parable of the wise and the foolish virgins, right? They all go out and they're all looking and they wait, but the bridegroom tarries. And so they all slumber and sleep until the shout of the bridegroom suddenly occurs. And I don't, you know, I used to wonder if that delay was the 2,000 years since his resurrection and ascension, and that's the timeline. But I truly now believe that this delay is not a very long period of time. And so it's very possible that what we're looking at right now could be the delay in that parable. Who knows? I mean, we won't know until we know, right? But we're praying about this, and we're asking the Ruach to lead us in this understanding. And so you all do the same thing. Another thing that came to mind this week as I've been praying and pondering these things is that we know in Isaiah 66:7 that it describes a woman that gives birth before she even goes into travail. She does not experience the birth pangs, and yet she gives birth. And so we know there's another story of a woman in Revelation 12 that goes into much travail, and that the delivery of that man-child comes after there is some very heavy birth pangs that woman is described as going through. And so I have had the thought this week that the Isaiah 66 woman could be prepared as the midwife for the Revelation 12 woman. That we are to prepare ourselves, and the Father will do the preparing, but we need to be ready to be used by Him. If, in fact, that role of being a midwife to help the other to go through the travail and prepare for the delivery of that child is something that He wants to use us for. So you all just pray about that, but I found that kind of an interesting parallel with why maybe we're seeing a lot of women rising up and finding themselves with a possible commission of, warrior, encourager. Many of us are commissioned with, crying out in the wilderness, prepare, repent, make straight the way of the Father. Right? And so there's just so many different commissions. And right now I just am so encouraged to see how the Father is using the bride that has made herself available and ready for the Holy Spirit to just kind of move and start to set up those commissions that we're seeing right now. The season that we're coming into, I believe, will be the start of the birth pangs. Guys, we can see this. We can see the travail at the very, it's right before our very eyes right now. If any of you are following the news, you may have been seeing the reports of the people dying mysteriously, quote unquote. There's also, here just recently, a lot of people are talking about how our diesel reserves are running out and we only have a few days left, maybe I think 15 at this point, I'm not even sure. But we hear all of this talk of war looming, the economic collapse looming, food shortages, weather catastrophes. This period of travail is right upon us. Excuse me. And so I want to share with you guys a little bit of the testimony that brought my family and I to the point where we are now. And it involves this train. This train that we see coming. We have been referring to this as the train for many years. My husband's analogy is that we're tied to the tracks and we can feel the vibration on the tracks. We know that train is coming. And our eyes were, for a long while, fixed on the bend in the tracks, waiting for that train to round the bend, and that we needed to be braced for impact. Right? And there were a lot of things that we were doing to do that bracing that we felt like we needed to do to prepare for this train that was coming. And so a little bit of the backstory for us is that in 2005, it was 2004 when we just walked away from our practices in Mississippi and our business that was doing well. We had very young children, and we walked away from a house there and our jobs, and we just left. We moved to the mountains. This urgent calling was placed in our spirits to get to the mountains. We didn't understand it. Our families all thought we were crazy because we had no job lined up. We had no security of anything. We just walked away. Now, we did end up selling our home in Mississippi, and then we lived in an apartment up here for a little while we purchased another place to move to. And we found this nice little neighborhood up here. It was very close-knit neighbors, very Norman Rockwell kind of neighborhood. We fell right into it and just absolutely loved the neighborhood. Everything seemed so perfect. And we had not lived there 6 months when a friend brought over a book and asked us to check it out. This book was called The Coming Economic Collapse. And it painted such a grim picture of this economic collapse that was going to take place. And the precipice for this collapse would be based in the loss of oil. Our oil reserves, our diesel, everything around this fuel was going to, the facade was going to be removed, and our nation is so oil dependent that it was going to cause the collapse of all things. It would be the mother of all collapses. When we think about just how much reliance we have on fuel, this doesn't just pertain to our cars, but the machinery that's used to harvest crops, the tanker trucks that bring us our food and supplies and our things from the ports, and our gas to the gas stations, even diesel generators that are used to run the cooling system at these nuclear power plants. I mean, everything in this nation is reliant upon oil. And so this book painted this very grim picture that if you were living in a tight neighborhood where you had a homeowners association and you could not grow your own food and you could not draw water from your own well, you were in very bad shape. And so our friends brought us this book over. My husband read it first and his face went white, and he handed it to me, and I read it, and then we both just felt so strongly impressed in our spirit that we needed to get to a farm. And we prayed about this, and we asked the Father, is this true? Is this about to happen? Because the book actually that we read in 2005, I think it had been written in like 2001 or something, and it believed that this collapse would happen around 2007 and 2008. And so we were praying hard about this and asking the Father to confirm for us if we needed to sell this house and move to a farm. And within days, what he did was so supernatural in our opinion, because we had been praying about this And we had an offer for some property that we still owned in Mississippi. And that offer was based in a rumor that had been going around that something big was coming to that area. And they thought that they were getting a jump on it with this rumor and made us a nice offer on this property. And it turns out the rumor was not even true. I believe those people still own this property and probably trying to figure out how to unload it somehow. But we had sold this, what seemed like worthless property, for a very nice price, and we were able to buy a farm. This all happened within a week or two of reading this book. And we put that for sale sign out in front of that house that we lived in then. Had only been there for 6 months, and we purchased a farm. And we got out here and started getting busy. And this train, we tried warning people about what we had read and what we felt like we were being shown, and this confirmation that, yes, truly this is about to happen. And we got out to the farm, and of course, you know, the real estate collapse and other things. We thought maybe the guy missed the mark about the oil and that this was the collapse, but it wasn't. It was just a foreshadow. But, you know, it was some more refining for us and in the process, and probably for many of you at the time as well. But what happened after that was that we went through what psychologically they would describe as the 5 stages of grief. Now, what I'm going to describe to you is probably something many of you will resonate with, and some of you probably already know. But these stages of grief are universal. And it would happen anytime, say, you get a terminal illness diagnosis, or there's a divorce of a loved one, a death of a loved one, anything that shocks your world. These 5 stages of grief are a process. And the Father began to take our family through these 5 stages. And there was a lot of refining involved. So the first stage is denial. You don't want to believe what you've just heard or read or experienced. You don't want to believe it. Your brain's first inclination is to go into what's called cognitive dissonance. You don't want to see the apple cart overturned. You don't want to believe it. And then the next stage is anger. You can't deny what you are seeing with your own eyes. You cannot deny that these things are real and they're about to take place. And you get very angry about it. I did. I had very young children and a future that I was looking forward to. I had a bucket list. I had it all, and I just couldn't. I got angry that these things were truly about to happen. And then you go into what's called bargaining. And in that bargaining stage, at least for us, it was very expensive. You figure, okay. If these things are really about to happen, then we're going to get this farm and we're going to start to grow our own crops and food, and we're going to get some livestock, and we're going to get a well with a hand pump in case the electricity goes out. We can do this. We'll survive, right? And then you get all the storable food, and you just feel like you're somewhat ready. And so that bargaining phase is a place where you just kind of start trying to rationalize how you can get through this. And then you get depressed. Because inevitably you realize we can't prepare for every eventuality. We cannot prepare for anything really in the level that we need to. This is going to be so dire that we just can't be prepared enough. Nothing is enough. And then you go back and forth between bargaining and depression. And what depression is, that's the most fearful stage. But you go back and forth between bargaining and depression. You get depressed that nothing you've gotten is enough. And then you go back to bargaining. Okay, so here's this new product we can get and this new level of preps that we can add to our things. And then you get depressed again. It's not enough. It's not enough. Nothing's ever enough. And it was in this stage of very deep fear that I had gotten to in my mind, and my husband had too. This train, we couldn't stop it. No matter what we did to prepare, we could not stop the train from coming. And no one else around us could feel it. We were getting so frustrated trying to warn others. Sorry, guys. And so that was adding to the frustration that, you know, we could see it so plainly. We could feel it on the tracks. Being tied to the tracks, you can't not feel it, but no one else seemed to understand that this was coming. And in fact, we were getting mocked and scoffed at, and we were just, all we were doing was trying to warn our friends and family about this. And so we were trying to tell them about this train. And I was out crying to the Father one night, just in utter fear that, you know, yet again, it wasn't enough. And I heard the Father speak so gently and lovingly. And as I was crying out to him, I heard him say in my spirit, "Why do you fear the train? Don't you know I am the conductor?" Guys, it was the first time I realized that I didn't have anything to fear. He is the one leading this charge. He is the one driving this train. And he loves me, and he loves you, and he has our best interest in mind. He is continually looking over us. He is invested in us, and we have nothing to fear. And when I heard him say that in my spirit, this warm blanket of oil washed over me, and I entered into, at that very moment, the final stage of these 5 stages of grief. And that stage is acceptance. It's trust. It is confidence. It is firm resolve. We have nothing to fear. He loves us, and he is protecting us, and will protect us, and will provide for our every need. And it wasn't until after that moment that I realized he began to show me that no matter what you have, he will provide. No matter what preps you've got or were able to afford to get, he will keep it replenished. We have to pray believing. We have to go into this season of travail with the confidence that he will provide for the impossible. We serve a Father, a master creator of the impossible. Do you believe? Because all things are possible to him that believes. Yeshua asks, "Will I find faith when I come?" And my resounding plea and declaration is, yes, you will find it with me. I cannot attest to anyone around me, but that is my gift to him. He will find faith with me when he comes. But it took going through these stages to get to that place of acceptance. So, guys, I would just ask you right now to take whatever time is left and get to that place. Get to that understanding, that confidence in him. His perfect love casts out all fear. If you do not feel like you're at that place right now in your mind, allow him to perfect his love in you quickly. Ask him to remove all fear, cast it all out. Because what he's going to call us to do is going to be so contagious for those around us that are so wrapped in fear they can't see straight. And if his bride isn't in that place yet, when these things begin to unfold and they are as fearful as the ones around them, then he's not going to be able to use you. So we have got to be running toward what everyone else is running away from. His true warriors, they will be running toward what everyone else is fleeing from. And I'm a very literal person. I believe when Yeshua says it will be as in the days of Noah, I believe they're going to literally be giants roaming the earth. I've had dreams of this. I have had dreams of creatures that we're told to chalk up for mythology. Those things will be visible. These things will be manifesting. I've actually had an experience or two where people have manifested as these kind of reptile creatures. Literally. I've seen this manifestation. And so I believe that these things are going to manifest. And it is going to cause the hearts of many to fail them with fear. And we do not need to be among that camp. We need to be the ones running toward what everyone else is running away from. And you can only do that when you have zero fear. Imagine David running toward Goliath. He had no concern with the abilities of Goliath, no matter how tall he was or how strong he looked, because David's focus was on the Father. And he knew that nothing was impossible for the Father, no matter what stood before him. And that's got to be where we are in our minds. This process of going through these stages of grief and getting ourselves ready to come to that place of acceptance where nothing makes us afraid. And when that's where you are, then he will blow your mind with what he will use you to do. This is where we need to be. Fear is very contagious. I don't know if any of you have seen some of those funny TikTok or Instagram videos. I don't subscribe to them, but I get them sent to me every now and then, where especially I think the women, they'll put these little videos out and say, let's see if your man matches your energy, or whatever they call it. And these women and men will be sitting there on a couch together, and the woman will suddenly just freak out, like she's seen a rat run across the floor or a snake or something. And the man will be sitting there on his phone, not even realizing. And as soon as the woman freaks out, the man will start freaking out. He doesn't even know what he's freaking out about, right? But that's a demonstration to me of just how contagious fear is. You don't even have to know what you're freaking out about. You just see someone else freaking out, and it spreads to you, Then, of course, the video always ends with them laughing, going, I got you. But this is where we're going to have to show how contagious faith is. This is going to be an amazing time. But people are going to be paralyzed with fear because the natural process is for your brain is sitting there trying to figure out what you're looking at, and it's not giving the command to your feet to run. And so that's what being paralyzed with fear means. And for some, it's going to be such a heavy paralyzation of fear that their hearts will even fail them at looking at what's coming. And so we have got to be in that place where we are demonstrating this faith that overtakes the contagious nature of fear. We have got to believe, pray believing that nothing that you have will run out. That is my prayer and belief right now. We have a heating tank full of oil for the winter. I believe beyond a doubt that that's not going to run out no matter how much we use. I believe by faith that nothing in our pantry is going to be depleted no matter how much we use it. It will stay replenished. And especially as we share it and help others with that. If you begin to hoard those things, then I believe they will be depleted. We've got to share these things. As the Father gives it to you, freely give. Do not be afraid. Guys, we have got to be the ones running toward what others are running away from. So prepare your hearts and minds and prepare your faith, your trust in Him. Be confident. Do not fear this train. Our Father is the conductor. You all be blessed. Have a great evening.